Hi guys, welcome back. This week we're going to be talking about dimensioning and dimension styles. I finally got some feedback from one of you guys with a question about the units of measure. The question basically was the dimensions in inches or feet? So today I would like to talk about how to set up dimensioning styles within your drawing. I'm going to go ahead and delete some of the stuff we have here. And I'm just going to draw a couple items. It's just a free-form drawing. Now, by now, most of you have probably tried applying a dimension to something. It looks like we need to set up a dimensioning style. We really can't see anything. So let's get to work on that. First of all, I should probably measure and see what kind of units we're actually dealing with. We have a measurement. That's quite a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and delete everything. And to get this drawing within a reasonable scale that we can comprehend, I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle with a diameter of 24 inches. Look how small that is. So let's zoom it in. Now, I just typed in zoom, return, and it's asking me for the first corner. Let's try this out. Oh, that didn't work out. Let's try this. Zoom, return, let's check. Okay. I'm going to go with the option of fit. All you got to do is type in the letter F. Boom, there's our circle. Now we should be within a reasonable scale. Let's dimension this circle real quick. Let's do a diameter dimension. Okay. Now, some of you are probably going to ask me, is this a diameter of 24 inches, 24 feet, 24 miles, 24 meters? And the answer to that question is yes. This is just your basic dimension. So what we need to do is we need to set up a dimension style for the kind of work that we're doing. And that's what today's lesson is going to be about. First thing you want to do is right click anywhere in the blank area on the screen. I want you to go down here to drafting options. You should see a screen that looks like this. Options, user preferences. It's important that you go down here to drafting styles. Here is where you can set up defaults for how your text looks, how your dimensions look. So click on the plus sign next to dimension. A dimension style is basically a set of standards for how your dimensions will appear. Sometimes you might have one dimension style. Sometimes you might have 10 dimension style. It all depends on what kind of work you're doing. we're basically going to create a new dimension style. By default, DraftSight is only going to have one dimension style, and that is standard. So let's create a new dimension style. Click New, and let's give it a name. Since I work in the woodworking industry, I'm going to call this dimension style Woodwork. And it'll be based on the standard. Realistically, that's the only dimension style we have right now. Apply to all dimension. For now, let's just leave it the way it is, all dimension. And let's click OK. And for the sake of this lesson, let's modify the linear dimension, which is the most common dimension that we do. Format, it's the first decision you have to make. And by default, our dimensions are done in decimal, because that's how DraftSight works. These are your basic dimension format that you can use. In the woodworking industry, we would be using architectural, fractional, or decimal. I'm going to go with fractional. And the precision will be to the nearest 1/16 of an inch. If you click on this arrow here, you can see that we have quite a few options. In woodworking, the tightest tolerance you'll ever really actually use would be the nearest 32nds of an inch. But for this lesson today, I'm going to go to the nearest 16th. Fractional display. You're all familiar with fraction. You have a line separating your top and bottom. You could do this horizontal or diagonal. Okay, now whenever you make a change, before you do anything else, you need to move your mouse down here and click Apply. If you do not do this, any changes you've just made will not be applied. And I just remembered that some of you might be looking at this. When you try it out, you might actually only be seeing this. You don't see any of the options down on the bottom. So make sure you are seeing the full drafting styles dialog box. You need to see this in order for things to actually work. While you're in here, you can actually set the way the text is going to look. If you click on this little arrow here, or this little box, you can actually set what kind of text is being used in your text, in your dimension. By default, this is the type of text font you're going to get. If you click on any of these, it gives you a preview of what your text will look like. There, as you can see there are quite a few text font styles that you can have. I'm trying to find the text that I typically use, and that would be this symbol or Tahoma. I like using this style. Remember, before you do anything else, click Apply. There's one more thing that we need to do. Since we're working in the industry, in the woodworking industry, and we're doing a fractional dimension, we might want to put the inch symbol. Remember, click Apply. Let's draw a rectangle real quick. And now I'm going to apply a linear dimension to this rectangle. Okay, there's one more thing that we need to do. When you're drawing, you're in your home tab. If you go to the Annotate tab, and you see these guys here, this is basically showing what text styles you're using and what dimension styles you're using. This is the dimension style that we just created. We're going to click on that. Now, any dimensions that we create will be using the Woodwork dimension style. See the difference? Let me go back and revert back to the default standard. Basically, what you're looking at right here is two dimensions that are actually the same, but they look different. This style you're looking at here will probably apply to a metric situation. So this would be a 41 millimeter, but these are not exactly the same. Inches and millimeters are not the same. What this is saying is, this is 41 units. When we use this dimension style, it's saying it's 41 and 1/16. Changing dimension styles will not convert metric to inch equivalents. I'm going to switch back to the Woodwork text style. The Woodwork dimension style. Now, things are looking a little weird here. So, the text is obviously small. So let's go back into editing the dimension style. You can get that by right-clicking, go down to drafting options, go into drafting styles, quick dimension, linear dimension, look for this little box here next to text. And let's change our text settings some more. Notice the height is currently set by default at 0.18. If you highlight that, let's change that to 1.5. Remember, click Apply, then OK. Our text got a lot bigger. Now there's another thing we can do here. I typically like to have my dimensions in a different color than my regular geometry. And here's how we're going to accomplish that. Go back home. We're going to go to our layers bar. By default, we only have 2 layers here. So what we need to do is create another layer for our dimension. Click on the Layer Manager button. Click New. And let's call it Dim. Now we're going to select our line color. I like my dimensions in red, but you could use green, magenta, blue, cayenne. Let's go with green. Click OK. Now if I highlight my dimension by doing a left crossing window, and you'll see that the dimension has been selected. Go to your layer bar, hit the down arrow, and select the dim layer. Hit escape. My dimension is a different color than my geometry. We're not quite done here yet. My arrow is pretty small, so we need to fix that. I right click, go back into drafting options, hit drafting styles, dimension. Let's change the arrows. In woodworking or architectural drafting, we typically use what's called an architectural tick instead of a closed-filled arrowhead. So if you click this arrow, we'll find the architectural tick. The start arrow and the end arrow, by default, will show up the same. And let's change the size of the tick to the same size as our text. Remember, hit apply, then OK. See what changed? The tick is now a little bit bigger than the arrows that we saw before. Now you're probably noticing that the dimension line is real close to the geometry that we dimensioned. This is called an extension line. There's an adjustment for that too. So let's go back in, right click, drafting option, drafting styles, dimension, linear dimension. Let's go over here and see what we can do with this. There are two different types of lines in dimension. You have your dimension line and your extension line. So what we were just looking at was the extension line. It's pretty close to the box. Let's see if we can make that look better. It's showing us it's only a 1/16 of an inch offset. Let's change that to 1/8. Hit apply and OK. See how it's a little different there? It still looks kind of close, so let's adjust it again. This time I'm going to change it to a 1/4 inch. Apply. OK. Let's try this again. This is one of those things that sometimes you just need to experiment. Let's see what happens when we adjust the dimension line setting. I still think we need to adjust the extension line. Apply. Okay. That looks a little better. Let's create another dimension style. And I'm going to call it metric. The units for metric are typically decimal. And I'm going to use the same text style that we were using on the other dimension style. Here's another neat option too. I'm going to check that. Hit apply. Okay. Now if you want to use that dimension style, what you have to do is make it the active style. Annotate. Let's go to metric. Go back home. Now execute the dimension command. Look at that, it's a little different. Now please keep in mind that we're not converting inch to metric by doing this. This line here actually is 41 and 1/16 units. But since we've created this dimension style, it is 41 and 1/16. If you wanted to make this line metric, well, let me go backwards. When you're drawing something, you need to keep in mind what dimension style you're going to be using. Are you doing a woodworking drawing, or are you doing, let's say you're drawing a machine part and you're going to dimension it in metric. So when you're drawing, you're using metric units. And here's a good example of that. Let's say I was to draw a line. Now, do I want to draw this line 25 inches or 25 meters? That all depends on how you're going to dimension it. As far as draft size is concerned, this line is 25 units long. But you're preparing a drawing for use for a manufacturer or a blueprint. You already need to know beforehand, is this going to be in inches or metric? There's a big difference there. So we've created two different dimension styles. Now this dimension style that we named metric is looking white. Now if you wanted to give that a different color, we can create another layer. And let's call it metric dim, and assign it a different color. Remember, hit OK. I would like to challenge you to create different dimension styles. You can have as many as you want. and try playing around with the sizes of the arrows and the sizes of the tucks. I look forward to hearing from you guys and how you're doing with this. And remember, I always say, save and save often. I'll see you next week.